You see that guy right there? Yeah, that guy right there. This is his first video, and he's terrified. Be gentle with him. It's only his first time. Cursed objects. They're kind of like that VD you picked up on your last trip to Vegas. No one's sure where it came from, but it'll destroy your personal life, might get you killed, and curing it will require intervention by a professional. Hi, I'm Aaron Reese, and welcome to the debut episode of Media Macabre. Today we're going to be covering the Supreme MacGuffin. That's right, cursed objects. Remember, if you enjoy this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more like it. And without further delay, let's count down the top 13 cursed objects in horror movies. Number 13, Drag Me to Hell, a button. This button dooms the recipient to 3 days of escalating pain and hallucinations before sentencing them to a literal eternity in hell. After being turned down for a loan extension, an elderly gypsy woman attacks loan officer Christine, tearing a button from her coat and cursing it. She later finds out that she's being haunted by a dark spirit before being attacked by it. Christine then hallucinates and her nose begins bleeding before she loses her spot as Employee of the Month by vomiting about twice her body weight in blood onto her boss. In an attempt to appease the curse and deeply anger PETA members, she sacrifices her pet to the demon but only succeeds in intensifying the hallucinations. And an attempted seance meant to trap the demon only makes things worse when it goes haywire and the demon seizes control of the ritual. After she attempts to transfer the curse back by placing the button in the gypsy corpse's mouth, Christine thinks she is free, only to discover that her boyfriend's OCD has left her in possession of the infernal item. In the end, we see a fiery hole appear in the ground, and demonic hands pull Christine into hell as her flesh is scorched from her body. I suppose teaching others about humility and kindness is important, but that's one hell of a way to do it. Number 12, Witchboard. Or Ouija, or Veronica, or pretty much any damn movie with a Ouija board in it. Whether a magical artifact or a dime store board game, the script is pretty much always the same. The board is used by some fool who has no idea what they're doing. They might receive some useful information or perks, but pretty soon things begin to turn strange. The user's loved ones start getting bumped off like flies before they very nearly suffer the same fate. Unsurprisingly, by treating a metaphysical tool like a game of pickup sticks, the user is ticked off a malevolent spirit that sticks around and will eventually try to get up inside of them. Metaphysically speaking, of course. Oh, and the expert that could have saved them got mysteriously bumped off back in Act 2. So good luck shaking it off before Satan ends up wearing them like a glove. Just drop the planchette. Number 11, Rampo Noir, aka Rampo Jigoku, a hand mirror. They say beauty is only skin deep, but in this case, it'll burn straight into your frontal lobe. Part of an anthology series, this one from South Korea, the hand mirror in 2005's Rampo Noir is supposed to be the work of science. However, it dates back to an ancient book of magic, and its effects are terrible enough to earn a spot on this list. Originally described in the Book of Kino Gyokuto, aka the Book of the Sun and Moon, the Shadow Mirror is a work of black magic created to suck the life out of anyone who looks into it. This is accomplished by coating the surface of a brass mirror in a fictional mineral called sarazeumite that converts infrared frequencies into microwaves. In other words, as soon as light hits its surface, the mirror begins to nuke the observer's face, and it's effective enough to burn through their face and skull and all the way into their brain. Excuse me, garçon, I ordered my geisha medium rare. Number 10, The Mask, aka Eyes of Hell, a ritual mask. No, I'm not talking about the Jim Carrey hit comedy. An Indian ritual mask of a little value, it basically looks like Skeletor screwed a mosaic, and this came out 9 months later. Its effects, however, are quite nasty and begin the first time the mask is worn. Upon being donned, the mask plunges the wearer into a vision filled with alien and terrifying imagery of flames, snakes, and eyes that dart towards the moviegoer in typical 3D fashion. Much like someone under the influence of reefer madness, the wearer is instantly obsessed and addicted to its effects, literally being called to put it on again and again. From all appearances, they also stop sleeping and bathing and are constantly covered in a sheen of flop sweat. With every use, the mask plunges them into stranger and more terrifying dreams, and it is said to have the power to bring out a person's evil and magnify it, corrupting even the kindest soul. This change in behavior begins with minor acts like rudeness and theft, but quickly escalates to visions of violence and even murder, and the wearer is typically led to end things themselves. It still beats the Jamie Kennedy version. Number 9, From Beyond the Grave, a door. Doors are rarely scary without being built in front of something terrible, but this door brings along its own menace. Yet another part of an anthology series, this door is adorned with a large bearded face and reveals a red stain when cleaned. Sometime after installation, the face of the door begins to glow pale blue and, when opened, reveals an ancient cobweb-covered room of the same color. Within this room lies yet another door, and while we never learn where it leads, footsteps can be heard to approach it before our would-be hero flees in fear. The blue glow returns time and again, and while exploring, he finds a journal that describes the room's true nature. Constructed during the reign of King Charles II of England, it was built by the reviled occultist Sir Michael Sinclair. In order to ensure his immortality, the room, and evidently the door, must be refreshed occasionally with the blood of a sacrifice, preferably female, because, reasons. The door and room meet their end, however, when Sir Michael lures the protagonist's girlfriend inside. In order to save her, he takes an axe to the door, causing both it and Sir Michael to begin bleeding. In the rarely seen intelligent move in a horror movie, he cuts the door from its hinges, sending the room and Sir Michael into the great hereafter. So much for vintage charm. Number 8. Oculus, a wall mirror. Seriously, Hollywood, what's with the mirrors? I know they're heavy metaphor material, but I still have to shave in the morning. Seemingly created evil, the Lasser glass has killed its first owner and at least 47 others over the next 4 centuries, just for the hell of it. Once within a house, the mirror begins to feed on the inhabitants, beginning with the most vulnerable. It sucks the life out of plants and causes dogs to bark incessantly before they weaken and finally disappear altogether. While this is happening, it has already started to exhibit its strange influence on the human residents. It picks on a person's weaknesses, creating paranoia and social friction that grow into a fixation on the mirror. They hear voices and see nightmarish reflections in the mirror that escalate into obsessive and self-destructive behavior and, eventually, the torture and murder of their own family members. It also takes what seems to be supernatural actions that turn out to be carried out by the residents while under its mesmeric influence. This grows into full-blown delusions, forcing the victim to completely question reality. While it supposedly has an influence range of about 30 feet, the target can never be sure whether he or she has ever left its presence. In the end, phone and power lines fail as the mirror's past victims begin to appear. The residents are then steered by the mirror into killing one another and themselves before it moves on to its next unfortunate home. Screw that, I'll take the 7 years bad luck. Number 7. The Red Shoes, a pair of high heels. Yes, I know they're pink, not red, but you'll just have to get over it or skip ahead to number 6. Loosely inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale, The Red Shoes focuses on a pair of high heels that sow chaos and death wherever they go. The byproduct of a gruesome murder wherein said shoes were cut off a dancer's feet, these stiletto-heeled menaces tend to haunt the South Korean subway line near Gokseong Station. Women who wear the shoes become more seductive and brazen than usual, and the shoes even seem to have a bewitching effect on the men she approaches. The other women around them quickly become jealous, though, with the shoes inspiring fighting and even murder in order to take possession of them. The shoes also seem to magically return to the owner every time they are taken, with the thief meeting a deadly end. It eventually becomes clear, however, that the shoes do not haunt the owner, but instead possess them with the dead spirit of the murdered dancer. You would think that their newest victim would be spared the fate of having their feet cut off when the spirit of the dancer is eventually put to rest. However, while it was she who murdered those who stole the shoes, it is the ghost of her own murderer and first victim that ultimately takes their life. A pair of shoes haunted by not just one, but 2 ghosts? Now that's one hell of a buy one, get one free. Number 6. Sinister, a film projector. Normally, if you found an old box of 8mm film reels, your greatest danger would be footage of Grandma and Grandpa doing the dirty. Those who discovered this box find that it contains reel after reel of families being murdered in various sadistic ways. Hanging, drowning, exsanguination, the list goes on and on. Additionally, this box also has the bad habit of moving from one home to another shortly before most of the family is murdered and the surviving child disappears. You see, any image, including these home movies, can act as a gateway for the demon Bughuul to enter our reality, and any child who comes into contact with him is inevitably possessed. Those who discover the extended cut endings reel also discover that Bughuul uses the possessed child and the spirits of the children he holds in thrall to execute the rest of the family before bringing the murderous little nipper into his own dimension. Unfortunately, this discovery is usually made just a little too late to avoid a repeat ending. And who says movies don't make kids violent? Number 5. Premonition, aka Yogen, a scrap of newspaper. While originally found as an actual news clipping, the newspaper of terror haunts the discoverer, giving them glimpses of events to come. Unfortunately, these predictions usually foretell fatalities with little time to stop them. After their first encounter, the afflicted begin seeing phantom versions of the paper with yet more dire predictions, and before long they begin penning their own headlines on any available surface. Unfortunately, this leads down the road to insanity, with some sufferers maiming themselves and almost all of them ending things by their own hands. The one poor bastard who tried to stop the deaths by summoning up the visions only made matters worse. What began as black spots on his arm quickly spread over his entire body, turning him into what I can only describe as a monochrome nightmare. Shortly thereafter, he either faded or burnt away, leaving only ashes and a shadowy imprint on the floor where he fell. Hey, if it bleeds, it leads. Number 4, the Shrine. A statue. Concealed within a dense, unmoving, and unnatural fog, this statue dooms any who come to see it. At first glance, the scariest thing about Albania would seem to be their food sanitation practices, but beyond being generally unwelcoming, they also threaten anyone who attempts to explore the peculiar fog lying over the local forest, and even forbid their own from ever leaving the village. Oh, and they also have a hidden shrine piled with the bodies of sacrificed tourists. Sadly, they like to drag them there before driving a ritual mask into their eyes using a sledgehammer. Those who insist on exploring the fog, though, find a tall statue of a demon with a human heart in its fist. Unfortunately, shortly after seeing the statue, they will begin vomiting and hearing voices. This soon escalates into a state of full-blown possession, wherein they are transformed into a shrieking, murderous monstrosity. Sadly, the villagers bear the burden of guarding the statue, and the mask, though it kills the possessed, is the only way of ending the possession and containing the demon. I guess curiosity killed more than just the cat. Number 3, Videodrome, a VHS cassette. Imagine if the mindfuck wall mirror from number 8 dropped acid and swung by for a BDSM orgy. That's Videodrome. While technically not an object, the Videodrome television signal causes not only bizarre hallucinations, but eventual death in those who view it, so I can't really describe it as anything but cursed. Initially appearing to broadcast from Malaysia, this channel features videos of violence and torture landing somewhere between Eli Roth and Cannibal Holocaust. Repeated viewing, however, causes an individual to begin to lose touch with reality in a series of increasingly bizarre hallucinations. Come to find out, not only is the footage real, but it originates in Pittsburgh, home of steel, bridges, and televised sadomasochism. Originally conceived and created by the so-called media prophet Brian Oblivion, a man who saw these hallucinations as another facet of reality, it was then co-opted as part of a political conspiracy to control the minds of Americans. Said conspirators used it as a means of producing fatal brain tumors in those viewing the violent content, and to reprogram them to commit assassinations and acts of public violence, and all of it in the name of eliminating undesirables from society. And I thought the apocalypse sucked. Number 2, Ring, yet another VHS cassette. A vessel for the rage of a dying child, this video curses the viewer to a gruesome death in precisely 7 days. The subject of an urban legend, the original copy of this VHS was found by a group of teenagers and later a journalist inside a cabin in the Izu region of Japan. Filled with strange and disturbing imagery, this video's only sounds are metallic scraping and an unintelligible chanting. If you're unlucky enough to be inside the aforementioned cabin when viewing the tape, you'll also receive a phone call that contains similar metallic noises. Much like dealing with a debt collector, if you don't do something within the time limit, you're dead. Within those 7 days, you'll be walked through the life and death of a psychic child named Sadako. You'll also be fortunate enough to receive a hand-shaped bruise on your arm and will appear in any photograph with a watery blur covering your face. Sadly, Sadako's mother killed herself before the father bludgeoned the child and dumped her in a well that now rests beneath the aforementioned cabin. In the end, the only cure to this curse is to make a copy of the tape and show it to someone else, further spreading the girl's torment. If that ain't the chain letter from hell, then I don't know what is. And at number 1, yes folks, that's right, it's the grand poobah of all cursed objects. Hellraiser, the Lament configuration, aka the Lamarchand configuration. Created by Philip Lamarchand, a maker of mechanical singing birds, this locking puzzle box is capable of opening a portal between Earth and a dimension of endless suffering. Trimmed in brass or gold and etched with arcane symbols, the box is supposed to require evil intentions and great focus to complete, though it sometimes appears as if a hyperactive toddler could crack it open accidentally. Once solved, the sound of a large bell can be heard tolling mournfully from the other side of a dimensional gate before the victim is treated to one of 2 fates. Either their skin is suddenly pierced by hooks and they're torn apart, or they're greeted by a terrifying race known as the Cenobites, led by their head priest Pinhead. and then their skin is suddenly pierced by hooks and they're torn apart. Under certain circumstances, it's even possible for humans to willingly cross this interdimensional bridge to enter the Cenobites' homeworld, though I don't know why any sane person would want to do so. Members of a race that blur the line between BDSM and straight-up torture, the Cenobites reside in a dimension outside of time and space. Upon being summoned, they will abduct the summoner, pulling him or her into this dimension and converting them through a process of torture and mutilation into one of their own. Next time, just stick with a Rubik's Cube. That was the top 13 cursed objects in horror movies. It's enough to make you swear off antique stores and garage sales altogether. Do you agree or disagree with the list? Drop it in the comments below and we'll all fight like starving dogs over a bone. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more like it. Once again, I'm Aaron Reese with Media Macabre, and I'll see you next time.